Helo, yn enw fi di Olwen Williams, a dwi'n ymgynghorydd mewn afiechydon rhywiol ac HIV. Ac dros y blynyddoedd, mae yr pandemig HIV wedi cael effaith mawr arna fi fel meddyg. Hello, my name's Olwen Williams, and I'm a former consultant in sexual health and HIV. The HIV pandemic has really probably formulated my career from the very start. So it's with great pleasure that I join you today to probably inspire you to make sure that the content that you're now going to create is very proactive and very contemporaneous. So can you imagine the scenario that you're about to sit your finals to become a doctor and you watch a TV program called Death in the Village? This was the Horizon program in 1983, which talked about the cases of, first cases of HIV, as we now know it, in the USA. It shocked me, it inspired me, it raised my curiosity, and it made me to look at what was actually happening out there. Now, there was nothing in the medical textbooks, we didn't have an internet, and I had to go to the library to find mainly press releases about what was going to be the biggest pandemic in my life. Well, until COVID came along. So from a very early stage in my career, I was really curious about this, what was called GRIDS, then became AIDS. The virus was discovered in 1984 when I was a house officer. A commercial test was available really quickly. And then the thing that really got to me was when I was approached by some colleagues over lunch, and they were talking about having tested a group of haemophiliacs who sadly had tested positive for HTVL3. But the thing was they hadn't been told that they were going to be tested. And my colleagues were saying, what do we do? How do we actually approach this? And I felt that this was an area I really wanted to work with. As you can imagine, HIV had a huge impact on people's lives back in the early 80s. There was no treatment, and most of us actually, as physicians working in the field, worked as palliative care doctors. However, in 1995, there was a major breakthrough when the protease inhibitors were invented. And by 1997, we had highly active antiretroviral therapy, which transformed the pandemic. The death rates from HIV dropped literally overnight. And for once in people's lives, 13, 14 years into this pandemic, they had some hope of living a normal life. And now in 2025, we can actually say that someone diagnosed with HIV as a 30-year-old will actually probably outlive other people because they have such good care. So much has happened over the last 40 years. So much has happened that is positive, but unfortunately, we still have stigma. And as a clinician working in the field in the early days, that was the biggest challenge. Actually challenging not only the public stigma around people living with HIV, but my fellow clinicians. And at times, I actually felt that I was an advocate and really there for my patients and their families, because often we were the only people that they could talk to. That is still an issue. People still do not want to disclose their status, and we want to make sure that that is overcome. So thank you for all the work you're going to be doing today to make sure that on Wikipedia that the information is contemporaneous, the language is contemporaneous, and that there is an element of positivity in what's happened over this pandemic. And I'll just end by saying I never anticipated that I would end my career with another pandemic, the COVID pandemic, where there have been some very similarities. So you think about what it was like in March 2020 when we started the pandemic, and think back sort of 40, 50 years ago to how it was the beginning of the AIDS pandemic. Thank you.